Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of On the Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 21 today. We're going to be reviewing our British Grand Prix predictions alongside looking at some news ahead of the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend. I'm your host, Adrian. Joining me, as ever, is my co-host, Ethan Evans. Ethan, how are you today?
Good. Had a nice week off, relaxing. We're not thinking about Formula One, ready to get back into it after the triple header.
Yeah, that's right. We've just had our first triple header of the season, and now we're jumping straight into a double header before a little summer hiatus, which we've already had. We don't really need a summer hiatus for us to. We've already had one. It's just the F1 guys just decided to casually just have a couple of weeks off without any action. But let's dive straight into our British Grand Prix predictions review. Yeah, pretty drab from me. How did you get on, Ethan? Did you get on any better than me?
Not terrible, but not great at the same time.
Bloody hell, sorry. I'm just casually dying here. So, Ethan, if you want to take away with your qualifying predictions.
So my qualifying predictions, I got a big 0 out of 5. I managed to get the right top 5 just in the completely wrong order. So I had Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Hamilton, Russell. So basically backwards, I got it. I basically had it correct in the reverse order, apart from obviously Norris and Piastri the wrong way around. I'm happy I got the right top 5, just the wrong order completely.
Okay, I think my voice is now slowly a little bit back, so I can do a little bit more talking. But for qualifying, I did manage to get 1 out of 5. I managed to predict Oscar Piastri in the right place as he started in P5. The rest of it, I didn't get right. I predicted Lando Norris on pole, Carlos Sainz in second, Max Verstappen in third, Charles Leclerc in fourth, but it was actually George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, and Max Verstappen. And into the race, I didn't get anything. I got nil point. So I predicted Max Verstappen to get the win with Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc rounding off the podium with Carlos Sainz and George Russell in P4 and in P5. So very much so, it could be down to potentially who gets the star predictions correctly. Ethan, how did you get on in the race?
So in the race, I had Norris, Verstappen, Hamilton, Piastri, Russell. So that's 2 out of 5 there. I had Verstappen and Piastri in the right places. Norris and Hamilton in the wrong order. So switch those around, and that would have been 4 out of 5, but 2 out of 5 for me.
And how did you get on in your star predictions? Did you get any points there?
I got half. So I had rain in an F1 session, so not including any of the feeder series or anything like that. And I think there was rain in every F1 session. I might be wrong, but it definitely felt like it whilst we were there, that there was rain in every single session. And I had no Aston Martins in Q3. And of course, they both got through to Q3.
Well, we're claiming that half a point because I put safety car, which there wasn't one, which was really bizarre. Usually there's somewhat of a safety car around Silverstone. But I did manage to get a DNF with George Russell. So overall, I did get 2. And if you're scamming your way with a half point, you do technically get 2.5 out of 12. So you did technically beat me by half a point. So
No. I'm taking 3 there because I got rain in an F1 session, which is a point. So I'm taking 1 out of 2 for my star prediction. So I got the other one completely wrong. I'm taking the rain in an F1 session as a full point. If anything, I should get 2 because it was in like every session.
no, we're not giving you 2. We'll give you 1. You can take this week's predictions under your belt. Let's move on to a bit of news. Back-to-back race weekends before the summer break. We've obviously got Hungary and Spa. Up first is the Hungarian Grand Prix, followed by the Belgian Grand Prix. Ethan, if you could make a bold prediction, do you think there'll be more race winners from the current grid? Obviously, we've had 6 winners across the first 12 races. Do you think maybe we could add Oscar Piastri and maybe Sergio Perez if he gets lucky? Do you reckon we can add a few more race winners, or do you think maybe we're going to have a repeat race winner once again?
Well, I think Sergio Perez is a no. You know, he had his good bit of early season form, as he seems to do. But then the last sort of 5-6 races, he's been absolutely atrocious. Oscar Piastri is the only question mark because he's had a couple of second place finishes. He looks quite quick. He's had a couple of unlucky calls with strategy. So take, for instance, at Silverstone, he could have won if McLaren didn't mess up his strategy for him. But you know, I think Piastri is the only one that you look on the grid and think, yeah, he could win a race. But other than that, everybody else that is a opportunity to win has already won the race. You look at the Mercedes, look at the Ferraris, Norris as well, and then of course Verstappen. They're the only likely winners. So the only one I'd say on the grid that could win a race is Piastri.
And going back to it was 2 weekends ago now. When those episodes are going to be out. Lewis Hamilton winning race number 104, extending his race win tally once again. Do you think he could be a repeat race winner this season? Mercedes have certainly picked up their form. Lewis Hamilton was desperately looking to leave a sinking ship, yet Ferrari look likely to be even more of a sinking ship than Mercedes at the moment, and is joining the team which are beginning to look a bit more like a sinking ship than the other team. What do you think of his run of form ahead of the last two races ahead of the summer break?
Yeah, his form's picked up over the last couple of races. Obviously, got that fantastic win at Silverstone, and Hungary is another track which he really, really likes. It's been a very strong track for him over the years. So I don't think it's out of the question that we could see a second race win at this coming race for Lewis Hamilton. But like you said, the Mercedes seem to have picked up their form. So if that's the case, then there's no reason to say that he can't have another race win at some point this season.
I think you made a valid point because Lewis Hamilton holds the record for the amount of, I believe, race wins and pole positions around the Hungaroring, which is, I want to say, it's eight at this current moment in time. So, without a doubt, Lewis Hamilton could make it 105 within the coming race, but we'll have to wait and see. Looking at the championship standings, obviously Max Verstappen leads a healthy lead ahead of Lando Norris with Charles Leclerc in third, Carlos Sainz in fourth, Oscar Piastri fifth, Sergio Perez sixth, and then the two Mercedes in seventh and eighth. We spoke about Sergio Perez a little bit here at the start of the episode, saying that he's probably the one out that top eight where he's not going to get a race victory. George Russell only being 7 points behind him, and Lewis Hamilton being 8 points behind him. That Red Bull obviously have a clause with Sergio Perez where if he falls below a certain quota of points and falls below a certain championship place, then he could be axed. Do you think that these next two races are going to be pivotal for Sergio Perez?
Absolutely, yeah. We praised Perez at the start of the season because he did have some good early season form. You look at his, I've got the first 6 races up here for him. He got second, fifth, second, third, fourth. He didn't beat Verstappen once, apart from that in Australia when he DNF, so that doesn't really count. But he really, really needs to pick up his form over the next 2 races. I think he needs a podium. He's obviously not going to meet those targets. He's not going to gain 32 points on Max Verstappen to get it under, no, it's like 38 points, isn't it? To get it under 100 points, the gap. He needs to go into the summer break ahead of both Mercedes as well. He needs to outscore those two Mercedes over these next 2 races. It's like you said, he's only 7 points ahead of Russell, 8 ahead of Hamilton. If he can show a little bit more form, get a podium maybe, and look strong over these next 2 races, then he's got a chance of retaining his seat. But as it is, I wouldn't be surprised if over the summer break we see Sergio Perez for 2025 is going to be axed. And then you look at a Daniel Ricciardo, it looks likely it'll be Daniel Ricciardo, or maybe they go outside of Red Bull and look at Carlos Sainz. But Sergio Perez is in a lot of trouble here. A lot of trouble.
Could be another twist in the tail. You mentioned there Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo. Those two have yet to have their seats confirmed for 2025. And I'd like to touch upon the 2025 grid right now because there's only a handful of seats, like you say, going. Mercedes have got a seat going. Alpine have got a seat going. So do Racing Bulls, the V-Carb team. Similarly to Haas, Sauber, and Williams. So there's 6 seats going, potentially 7 if Sergio Perez is axed by Red Bull. If you could pick a driver to go in every single team, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but if there was a driver that you'd pick for every single team, who do you think would be your go-to man to go to a Mercedes and Alpine? Because I think for Mercedes, they're likely to either look at Carlos Sainz or Kimi Antonelli. For Alpine, I think it's between Jack Doohan and Mick Schumacher. For Racing Bulls, I reckon it's between Ayumu Iwasa and Liam Lawson, who gets the seat there. Going to Haas, it's probably likely to go to Kevin Magnussen. Sauber are probably going to be in the hunt for Carlos Sainz, and similarly to Williams, they're going to be in the hunt for either Carlos Sainz or Kimi Antonelli. So who do you think who goes where? If you could solve the puzzle right now and put a definitive answer on the final grid for 2025, where do you place any of the drivers in those six teams?
So, for argument's sake, I'm going to say that Perez is confirmed in that Red Bull, even though, there may be a clause where they can get rid of him. But I'm going to say, for argument's sake, he's confirmed. So, Mercedes, I think it's got to be Carlos Sainz. Antonelli, he's very raw. He's a very promising talent, but I don't think he's ready for Formula One yet. He's only got two wins in F2, and they're both sprint race wins. If I'm not no, he's got a win and a podium in F2. So I think he's too raw to put in yet. I think he needs another season. Because he's not very high in the championship. So I'll go Carlos Sainz in that Mercedes because as well, Sainz deserves a top seat. There's talk about him signing for Williams, for Alpine, for Sauber. He needs to be in a top seat. He deserves it. RB. As much as I love Daniel Ricciardo, what does Liam Lawson have to do to get a seat in Formula One? He's been absolutely fantastic in those, 6 or 7 races last season, where he stepped in when Daniel Ricciardo had that wrist injury after Nick DeVries got sacked. What does he have to do? So I'd have him there. Haas. Now, I can see this going two ways. I can see them either sticking with Kevin Magnussen if his form picks up, bit of continuity there. To go alongside Ollie Behrman. I can also see them going for Esteban Ocon, obviously without a seat for 2025 as it stands. A very good driver, but the concern that I would have if I'm Ao Komatsu, looking at Esteban Ocon, is he tends to clash with his teammates. You look at Sergio Perez at Force India at the time, Alonso at Alpine, and now Pierre Gasly at Alpine. He tends to have a lot of incidents with his teammate, and when you've got Ollie Behrman coming into the team, I think it's a risk to put him alongside someone like Esteban Ocon, because you want Behrman to have that good environment to learn off of a more experienced driver and to get that know-how and then elevate himself to that next level and start putting in those performances. You don't want him to go into a situation where it was basically like sort of like an Alonso Hamilton from '07 at McLaren type of team, as much as it isn't to that level. But you get what I'm trying to say. Alpine, I think Jack Doohan's pretty much got that seat confirmed. I know Mick Schumacher's in the running, but I think it is going to go to Doohan. Then Williams. Williams is an interesting one because I think they kind of hedge their bets on Sainz, and it looks like he might be turning him down. So maybe someone like Valtteri Bottas could go there. Or an outside bet would be Colapinto. He'd done that FP1 testing session for them at Silverstone, and then maybe they decide to take him permanently. He's obviously in the Williams Academy as well. Sargent isn't going to have a seat for next season. Let's be real. So that is the option, and then finally it's Sauber. Now I think if Ocon doesn't go to Haas, he could go to Sauber alongside Nico Hulkenberg. And I don't know who else would go into that seat. Maybe Sergio Perez would if he was to get fired from Red Bull. But that is a massive if. So I'm going to probably say Esteban Ocon at Sauber and then Kevin Magnussen at Haas.
Interesting. We'll obviously, in the closed season, we'll obviously do a more in detail talk about our 2025 grid predictions whilst we've got time on our hands. But another topic, let's continue about the drivers that are signed on. So Aston Martin have obviously signed on Lance Stroll, which was inevitable. Lawrence Stroll's son, it was going to happen regardless. Pierre Gasly signs on at Alpine. I wasn't really shocked, but especially with Esteban Ocon leaving the team, I see Gasly obviously being the leading light in that team, and Oliver Behrman joining F1 at Haas. What have you made of the three signings? Obviously, Oliver Behrman joining the grid. The first time that Britain have four drivers since I believe I want to say 2008, 2009, those sort of times where there's been four British drivers on the grid. It might actually be even a little bit later. I think I'm not quite sure on the time because I believe that there was a statistic that was put out. But what have you made of Oliver Bearman, especially signing a little bit? A little bit raw when it comes to his success in Formula 2 at this current moment. But I reckon Haas have picked him up knowing that in Formula 1, when given the machinery, the man delivers.
Yeah, that brilliant race for Ferrari at Saudi. And I think that's probably what sold Haas on him. I think his F2 form, yeah, it's not been great, but there's been issues with Prema this season. A lot of mechanical issues which had been sort of outside of his control. He got that win in the no, he didn't get that win, did he? He had a good performance though at Silverstone. A strong showing there. But I think his F2 form has been pretty irrelevant as it stands. I think he knows he's going to Haas. Haas knows they're gonna hire him. It's just a formality of going through the season, getting what he can. But yeah, I don't think the final position in the F2 Championship will be of great concern to either Haas or to Ollie Bearman.
And what about Stroll and Gasly? Are those two for you just routine signings? You were expecting them?
Yeah, I was expecting both of them, especially with Alpine announcing Ocon was leaving. Gasly is obviously their man. They want to build their future around and, bring through somebody else, maybe like a Jack Doohan or something, as I mentioned earlier. And for Lance Stroll, again, yeah, it just shows that the lack of vision from Aston Martin and the lack of, ambition to go on and get these higher places in the Constructors' Championship, because how many times have we said it that they would have finished second or third in the Constructors if they had two top drivers for them last season. So it just shows that they're okay where they are. They're not looking to win the Constructors. They're not looking to upset the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull. They're just happy where they are.
Talking about Aston Martin there, let's touch upon them a little bit. Obviously, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll for 2025. Do you think that it's maybe a tad harsh that they've not brought through someone like Felipe Drugovich? We've talked about this on numerous occasions where Formula 2 champions have simply not been given enough of a chance. We obviously saw Mick Schumacher come through at Haas, have 2 seasons, then he was dropped. Oscar Piastri is obviously the most recent F2 champion to come through. Felipe Drugovich didn't get a seat. Tadej Pogačar has not got a seat in Formula 1. Do you think it's a little bit harsh on those Formula 2 champions, especially with the amount of money that they're plowing into the sport and them not being able to secure a top seat in Formula 1?
Absolutely, yeah. You look at sort of the last sort of four F2 championships. You look at Tadej Pogačar last season, can't get a look in. Went to IndyCar, has now been dropped from IndyCar as well. Drugovich as well. Has anybody seen him since he was in F2? I think going into that Aston Martin Driver Academy is probably the worst thing he could have done because, both seats are taken up because Fernando Alonso is a golden boy, and he's alongside the other golden boy in Lance Stroll. So he's not going to get a sniff in there. And then even going back to Oscar Piastri, he had to wait a year to get his seat in Formula One. I know he's a highly sought after driver. He was always going to get that seat, but still, he was good enough to jump straight into Formula One. And then Nick De Vries as well. He had to wait how many years to get a seat in Formula One, but bottled it when he got it. I don't think there's been many times there's been zero driver changes like there was from last season to this season, which is awful, really. I think there needs to be sort of the impetus to bring through these younger drivers, and hopefully you're seeing that now with a lot of driver contracts up. You're seeing Ollie Bearman come through. There's talk about Kimi Antonelli. Isaac Hadjar was testing for Red Bull at Silverstone, Colapinto for Williams, and hopefully Liam Lawson can get that seat on the grid. But it's about time we had a bit of fresh blood in there, and these drivers have something to prove. They'll be better racing.
Just sort of into our final F1 topic before we look a little bit into F2 and F3. The 2025 sprint calendar has been released, so we've got 6 sprint races on the calendar for next year, with China, Miami, Belgium, Austin, Brazil, and Qatar all hosting sprint races. What have you made of that calendar? China once again being named as a sprint race. Yeah, what have you made of that? Surely, maybe we should have some different sprint races. Maybe alternate them. Because we've obviously had the sprint races now for last year and then this year. Maybe for the third year having some different sprint races. But what have you made of the sprint calendar? Should the sprint calendar be maybe slightly altered?
I mean, I think for a few races, yeah, but for some races that the sprint format works. Getting as many meaningful sessions at Brazil as possible is a good thing because Brazil is probably it's probably the best racing track on the calendar, and it never seems to disappoint at all. So getting as many meaningful sessions there, it can only be a good thing. China was a good sprint race this season. It didn't set the world alight, but it was a good sprint race. And then somewhere like Miami, which has been a pretty poor racetrack. Hopefully, by getting more racing there, it'll make for more of a spectacle, which is what Formula One want, really, isn't it? Because Miami's seen as like the F1 higher ups. It's their new crown jewel, isn't it? They want these massive events with how many celebrities attending. So, I think if there was a bit more variation, then that would be a good thing. But I think there's certain tracks where a sprint race will be better for, and certain tracks where it doesn't suit it at all.
Let's move on to a bit of Formula 2 and Formula 3 talk. So, in the meantime, whilst F1 had its bit of a hiatus, Formula 2 and Formula 3 are obviously working on the cars of the future, trying to get as close to Formula 1 level as possible, trying to get as much of an accessibility to both championships as possible. So, the Formula 3 driver Sophia Flores and F1 Academy driver Chloe Chambers took part in a Formula 2 and Formula 3 test at Silverstone a couple of days ago. Whilst we're recording, it's the 16th, and they took part on the 12th and 13th of July. To obviously help define set up regulations of both the F2 and F3 cars in order to accommodate a wider range of drivers to make the step up into the championships. Ethan, obviously two female drivers. There's been a lot of step up in Formula 4, F1 Academy, Formula 3, especially with Sophia Flores. Trying to get as many more females and as many drivers of different backgrounds into F2 and F3 to obviously make the step up into F2 and potentially into F1 more accessible. What do you make of these sort of changes made by the FIA heading forwards? Because surely it's a step in the right direction with replicating, potentially getting a little bit closer to the F1 cars, and gaining as much accessibility into the championships as possible for more of a wider range of drivers in the near coming future.
Yeah, well, I think the diversity, and it can only be a good thing, really, can't it? Because you look at the F1 grid, and the vast majority of them are rich white Europeans, aren't they? So by diversifying it and adding people who don't fit that quota, and adding people as well who don't always have the funds to do a karting championship spanning different countries, it can only be a good thing because there's so much talent that is being missed and being lost by not allowing these opportunities to be provided to other people. That you may actually miss the next Lewis Hamilton, for instance. You may actually miss the next Michael Schumacher. These drivers who have got such good potential could be going completely under the radar and completely forgotten about. So yeah, I think by making these different opportunities, giving these different avenues out to a wide range of different people and drivers, it can only be a good thing.
Let's look into the F2 and F3 championship standings. So let's begin with the Formula 2 standings. Isaac Hadjar obviously leads the way on 133 points after his feature win feature race win in Silverstone, with Paul Aaron dropping to second and Zane Maloney moving up to third. There's currently a 26 point gap between Isaac Hadjar and Paul Aaron in the F2 Championship. Obviously, Zane Maloney is a few points behind Paul Aaron. Gabriel Bortoleto in fourth, Franco Colapinto in fifth, and Jack Crawford kind of catching up that top five in sixth. Any of those six drivers, I reckon, are in the running once again. Paul Aaron had the consistency heading into Silverstone. That completely went out the window. Isaac Hadjar now leads the way. What do you think Paul Aaron will need to dethrone Isaac Hadjar from the championship lead heading into the summer break?
Well, he needs to get that consistency back, doesn't he? I think he had a podium at every single race up to Silverstone. So he didn't get the best out of qualifying. I think he'll be ruining that session because that seems to be where he's been very consistent this season. And due to the changeable conditions, he just missed it. He just missed the spot, didn't get the lap in, and suffered as a result of it. And he got 0 points from the weekend because of that. So I think getting into that, getting that good qualifying under his belt will be the main thing. And then seeing what he can do in the sprint race and feature race. But it's an incredibly tight championship. We saw a 27-point swing at the last race, and Paul Aaron is only 16 points behind Hadjar. So, I think there's plenty more twists to come because we've got another 6 or 7 races in the season.
Yeah, you can tell my maths is pretty awful with me being a slight little bit ill. Ethan's right, it is 16. It's not 26, it's 16 points. On to F3. Gabriele Amini leads the way in there, with Arvid Lindblad in second, Luke Browning in third. Those three are separated by 7 points. I can do the maths with that one. They're only separated by 7 points. 36 points last weekend for Arvid Lindblad. A double race winner at his home Grand Prix. Could I dare say it? Could he become a championship leader ahead of one of the final rounds of the season?
You never know. What's that? 3 races left in F3. So he had a brilliant weekend at Silverstone. I don't think in front of his home fans it could have gone any better, really, could it? Obviously, it was a hectic feature race. There was a lot of incidents going on, a lot of stop-start, and he didn't actually win it on track, did he? He was second, and there was a penalty for what's his name in who finished on track in first.
Callum Voisin.
That was it. Yeah, got name slipped my mind for a second there. But there, like I said, there's 7 points between the top 3. There's 3 races to go. It'll be a really fascinating end to the season.
And now, finally, to round off the episode, let's look ahead to the Hungarian Grand Prix. Ethan, kick us off with your star predictions.
So for my star predictions, I have gone for less than 4 DNFs. So we often do, 3+ DNFs. I've gone the other way. I'm going to go with less than 4. I've gone for Alex Albon to get points. Got points in Silverstone when he wasn't expecting it. So I think, there could be a repeat of that this weekend.
For my star predictions, I've gone Alpine back in the points, whether that's Pierre Gasly or Esteban Ocon. They had a shocker at Silverstone. So I'm hoping they bounce back at the Hungaroring and bring back some points. And for my other star predictions, I've once again settled with a safety car one. I'm determined to get one safety car prediction correct at least this season, so I'm determined and I've stuck with the safety car predictions. And into qualifying, my top 3 is 3 different constructors. I've got Lando Norris pole position, Max Verstappen in second, and Carlos Sainz sneaking in third, with Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc rounding off the top 5. Yes, no George Russell. Yes, no Oscar Piastri. Yes, no Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez is likely to finish 16th once again. So then in the race, I've gone with Max Verstappen to win the race. I think he's going to come through once again with his Max Verstappen effect and win the race, with Lewis Hamilton in second, Lando Norris in third, and then Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz rounding off the top 5.
So for my qualifying, I've gone for Lewis Hamilton to get pole. Like I said before, it's a track he loves. Track he's very strong at, and he got pole position last season there as well. And I think he could do the same again on Saturday. And then I go on Max Verstappen, George Russell, and then the McLaren duo of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri rounding out the top five. In the race, I've gone for Verstappen to take the victory, and then Hamilton and Norris rounding off the podium. Oscar Piastri in fourth, and I've gone for Carlos Sainz to get up into fifth.
So a similar top five for us in the race. Whether it will happen, who knows? We're only going to have to wait and find out. That rounds off episode 21 of On the Grid. Thank you, Ethan, for joining me on this episode. We'll be back next week reviewing the Hungarian Grand Prix and previewing the final race ahead of a summer break, which is the Belgian Grand Prix. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.